Now is a good time to be someone who enjoys time loop stories. They're everywhere, from mainstream Hollywood movies to best-selling video games to Game of Thrones fanfiction featuring Joffrey as the hero. At this point, they've kind of become their own subgenre, and in some ways it's easy to understand why that would happen, because you can make a time loop story out of anything. Romantic comedy, Palm Springs, boom. Alien invasion, Edge of Tomorrow, boom. Slasher movie, Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You. Christmas movie, you've got Christmas Every Day, 12 Dates of Christmas, 12 Days of Christmas Eve, Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas, Just Another Christmas, Christmas All Over Again, Christmas Do-Over, and yeah, the highly specific concept of Christmas time loop movie is surprisingly common. When I stop to think about it, time loops themselves are a surprisingly specific thing to have become so popular. Other science fiction premises as narrow as this don't get anywhere near so much attention. I can only really think of all the body swapping movies they used to make as a similar trend. So why do people love time loops so much? I think it's down to a particular type of atmosphere you get when a character is looping. There's this comforting feeling that the rest of the world has fallen away, and what you're left with is something that's both familiar and exciting at the same time. So in the rest of this video, I'm going to be explaining the elements that I think go into creating this feeling. Now, you can't talk about time loops without talking about Groundhog Day. This was the film that made the idea of time loops part of mainstream popular culture, taking it from fairly obscure literary science fiction to something that everyone's heard of. Fast forward to Palm Springs getting its online release in 2019, and all the main character needed to say to explain the premise was,
"It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about."
When someone heads into a time loop story today, they already know roughly how things are going to play out. Starting before the loop has begun, there's this intense focus on all kinds of mundane details, like the song playing on the radio when they wake up, or a specific phrase that someone says. Background details like this would usually get skipped over in another type of story, but here they provide the setup for showing you what stage of the loop you're at in the future. We'll also get to see our main character dealing with a series of minor problems. They'll trip over something, they'll get hit by something, they'll get violently murdered. And from the way these things are focused on, you just know that the attempts to overcome these issues are going to get iterated on a few thousand times and provide the points of divergence in each future loop. And this kind of problem solving is the first thing that gives time loops their appeal. Each thing the protagonist of a time loop story does turns into an elaborate puzzle to be solved. The safety net of the time loop makes all kinds of fun experimentation possible, because if you mess something up, you can always try again. The main example of this we see in Groundhog Day is the need to avoid the irritating Ned Ryerson, and to not step in a pothole while doing so. Before the loop begins, he's confronted by Ned, gets annoyed by him, then steps in a pothole and walks away with his leg drenched. Then when the day resets for the first time, he's approached by Ned again, gets away a little bit faster, but still steps in the pothole because he hasn't realised what's going on yet. The next time, he rapidly pushes Ned away and in his haste ends up stepping in the pothole again. Finally, he punches Ned in the face and then happily steps over the pothole to get on with the rest of his day. Later on in the film, we see him stealing money using perfect timing and seducing Nancy using information learned during previous loops, showing the end results of this process of trial and error. And this kind of problem solving based on future knowledge is a fixture of time loop movies that you can see all over the place. In Palm Springs, the film opens with Niles dancing around the other people at the wedding effortlessly, and you just know how many times it would have taken him to perfect that little routine. And then you've got films like Boss Level and Edge of Tomorrow, where problem solving is almost the entirety of the story, because they have to constantly iterate just to stay alive a bit longer. This is very similar to the experience of playing a video game. It's most obvious in games that expect you to fail often, like Dark Souls and Hotline Miami. In both of these games, you can easily die within the first few seconds, but each time you learn slightly more about what not to do and get just a little bit further. Really though, most games contain some of this kind of experience, because the entire concept of saving a game and then reloading it leads to this type of fun where you can learn the sequence of events and then use that information to your advantage by changing what happens the next time you try. Having a character get to use their future knowledge to their advantage like this is essentially a really satisfying power fantasy. The middle of a time loop story is all about the characters having fun doing whatever they want. Spend months learning how to make ice sculptures? Why not? Learn an elaborate dance routine just to show off in a bar? Go ahead. The time loop is like their own personal sandbox, where things only matter because they believe they do. And a lot of these stories go a step beyond that, using their setting to make the time loop into something you'd want to experience. There's a reason Groundhog Day is set in a small town and Palm Springs is set in Palm Springs. These are the kind of places where people would feel comfortable spending a lot of time. Maybe you have a memory of a place where you felt really at ease. That place probably felt separated from the rest of the world somehow. Maybe by snowy or stormy weather. Maybe it was a country cabin or a quiet train. Pretty much any environment you'd find in an ambience video or as the background for a lo-fi music playlist. Because of this seclusion, it feels like the world has shrunk down to just this one place, and the pressure of everything outside of it is gone. Well, here, instead of a secluded place, it's a secluded time. We start to imagine, what if the perfect cozy feeling we get from certain events that are pressure-free could go on forever? A trip to a new place, a family celebration, Christmas. It makes time loops really chill and relaxing, at least for a while, because eventually they run out of new experiences to enjoy. This is when the pleasant side of a time loop ends and the existential nightmare begins. The downsides come into focus. Nothing you do has any lasting impact. This is great at first when you want to try things out and have short-term fun, but once you've experienced thousands of years worth of this, it would lose some of its appeal. This brings us to the last stage of a time loop story, where they need to escape the loop by completing their hero's journey. Usually things are set up so the character can only escape the time loop by experiencing some type of personal growth. This of course means that the main characters in these stories are usually the type of person that never learn their lesson the first time around and have to have it beaten into their head for close to eternity. In Palm Springs, Niles has to overcome his nihilism and care about other people in order to make the decision to leave the loop. Phil in Groundhog Day has to become a less selfish person and care about the people of the town as the actual mechanism of leaving. Tree in Happy Death Day has to become a better person to become capable of solving her own murder to end the loop. It's a combination of getting an endless number of do-overs and a pressure-free environment that makes it possible for these characters to develop so much. Seeing other people improve and overcome their issues is pleasing to the human brain, because we want to improve too. Stories like this make us see past the limitations we usually think within, and instead think about our own potential. And that's why time loop stories are so enjoyable. Hopefully we'll see them featured in many more films, games and books in the future.